You are muted now.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So I will be talking about taking responsibility for resource use and the development of an Angler app that has been done in collaboration here. So this project started in January last year. And by November this year, just a few weeks ago, we put this app up on App Store and Google Play, and I'm very happy about that. So now SLU has joined the growing number of organizations that has such an Angler app. It is, even though it is up on and available for download, you won't be able to use it unless you sign up with us, and I will explain more about why and how we are working with it at the moment. We call it spöreg, meaning kind of rod registration. We will maybe find a funnier name in the future, but this is related to how we name our databases at SLU Aqua. As the image suggests, we are focusing on sea trout and pike. But before I talk about the app, I want to give you some background to the project and motivation for developing an app at all. So from my perspective, some key motivations for this project has been these 3 bullet points, that for too long, the considerable importance and impacts of recreational fisheries have been ignored, which is from an opinion paper that was kind of nicely summarizes the status of how we treat recreational fisheries. So I can only agree with that. Secondly, this is a comment from a colleague working with data collection from commercial fisheries. Scientific advice to fisheries management is only as good as the data it is based on. And this can, you can reply that when fishers complain about our advice, saying that we are wrong in the stock assessments and stuff. But we can only give advice based on the data we have. So help us collect better data. But you can also turn this around and frame it against us scientists, saying that we can't only say we don't have data, we also need to act to get data, try and find projects and collaborations to make this happen. And then the last one, thirdly there, I believe that if you make a living from a shared and free resource, you should contribute to its sustainable use. There is some kind of moral or ethical obligation to help here, even though it's not a legal one, maybe. Especially in Sweden, we have no requirements for licenses or catch reporting or anything on our coast and in the 5 largest lakes. It's open access for all, both the people in Sweden and elsewhere. So in line with that sort of reasoning, if you extract a bigger benefit from this open access, you'll also have a higher obligation, I think, to contribute to make it sustainable, in my view. So following that kind of line of thought, this project centered around a collaboration between managers, scientists, and fishing guides, which in Sweden are organized in an organization called SOF, Sweden's Organized Fishing Guides. And the idea of the project was that managers take responsibility and better acknowledge and integrate recreational fisheries using the local knowledge from guides. We as scientists take responsibility to find ways and collaborations to make this happen, and also to improve data collection and monitoring. And the guides need to take responsibility for their activity and contribute both with data, but also in the management process, and can also make their voices heard in a better way in that sort of collaboration. We call this the local project, and also the side project on collaboration for profs, professional fishers for science. Now this project happened during the pandemic, so the networking part and the collaboration and the discussions really suffered from the restrictions. We've done the best we can under the circumstances, but we are still in need of more discussions on how to move forward from what we have at the moment. The first step has been taken, at least, I think. Why focus on pike and trout then? Well, they're highly targeted in recreational fisheries, in angling. So this slide here shows the response to the question, what species did you aim to catch, separated for inland waters and coastal waters, from the national survey in Sweden that is sent out 3 times a year. And this is an average across seasons. The species that are targeted varies a bit over the season, of course, but in general, you have perch, trout, and pike as the 3 most targeted species in Sweden. And this is probably because they exist, you know, they are spread all along the coast and all the inland waters, almost. They are very abundant, at least. But unlike perch, pike and trout are not well monitored. As you heard earlier in this symposium, we are not really getting the data we need on pike. Same is true for trout. For trout, there is, however, some electrofishing in streams, but nothing on the adult population. And a side note here is also, if you notice, no particular species is kind of at the same level as many other species that are targeted, both in inland waters, but also in the coastal waters. So these are people that, you know, they just want to go out fishing, not really fishing for anything, but maybe just the experience of being outdoors. Yes, so the aims then was for us to develop a tool for collecting angling data on pike and trout. And the rationale for that is that we want length-based data, length distributions, so we can work on indicators. So it's very interesting to hear John Droll talk a bit about that also. We also see that we can get catch rates if the app is continuously used. But the primary aim for me was to get the length distributions on these stocks. We wanted to develop it with and for the fishing guides to ensure it's an easy to use tool, because their main purpose of being outdoors and fishing is to provide a nice experience for the clients. So we can't interfere too much with data handling and data reporting. They need to be able to run their business in a similar and in a efficient manner. So that's why we also wanted them to provide very close feedback on how we should develop this tool and how it should look and work. Also with regards to the level of detail in the data reporting. Should it be in millimeters? Should it be in centimeters? You know, that sort of thing. And the secondary aim, as I mentioned, was then to acknowledge and evolve guides in management and improve our data collection and monitoring. The app, this figure is from Venturell et al., a really good paper. So it's a kind of a standard app in that sense. You have an angler that uses an app to log fishing trip data, time, some size distribution and location, use a phone, send it up, and then you can get private user feedback to yourself, kind of like a catch diary. We can aggregate the data, analyze it spatially, analytically, and provide some advice to managers that will likely have some sort of response that feedbacks to the angler. In this case, it's fishing guides, and this also creates kind of the risk here that they are afraid that will this data be used to limit their own fisheries? So that sort of discussion is needed to have. Now we can't promise anything what the managers are going to do once we analyze the data. So that's why we need these kind of discussions. Our demands for the app was that it should run on a mobile phone, both Android and Apple, easy to use, GPS location. We wanted complete offline functionality because of reception issues maybe. And the nice thing is that we wanted it to fit in the Esedu Aqua database structure that we have using common reference data. So it's integrated with our other systems. We pick up species names and that sort of thing from our other databases. Now, this also allows us to put in a data validation in the client, in the phone, so that when you report weight and length, we can check that against our weight length relationships and flag outliers and ask them, are you sure about this? We are currently doing that silently because we don't want to interfere too much, and we are likely moving in a range of that relationship that we are not used to from the data we already have. And then a quick run through of the app to give you a sense of functionality. I apologize, some of these are in Swedish, but what we have are these, it's called JSON files. So we have language files that are relatively easy to change when it comes to the buttons. But since we use the data from our databases, the common reference data, species name and that sort of thing is more difficult to change. But currently it's mainly in Swedish and English. We are working with Swedish fishing guides. What you do is before you fish, you register a trip, then you need to provide a name for that trip. You can choose freely, the date that you're gonna go fishing, the number of people fishing or the number of gears, the target species you're after, and then we have an area separating coastal and inland. It is possible to report a trip after, but it's meant to be used live. You save that trip and then you have an overview of the trip on your phone. So a green one has ended but not been uploaded. Yellow has started, and this blue one is happening, this one tomorrow. So then you start the trip. And when you start the trip, we quietly store time and location for that press of a button. So you're meant to start it when you're in the boat and you're about to go out with your clients. Hopefully, then you can put your phone away, and then hopefully you catch something. Then you want to register catch, and we do that by selecting a species. So we have some pre-selected species you can select from a list. Once you press one of those, you get a pop-up view of length and weight, and then you can provide measured or estimated weight and length. And for trout, it's also a fin clip, so it's if it's a wild one or a reared one. Although perch is not a priority species in this app, we didn't want to exclude it. Also for pike, you can have these really nice pike fishing times. So all of a sudden, all the people on the boat start catching pike, and there's a lot of action on the boat, and you can only keep track of the numbers. You don't really sample them for weight and length. We also have this catch day total or a batch registration you can provide, and then you put in the total number of fish at that location. And then you can also see how many you've caught today and how many of them have been sampled for length or weight, or both. And every time you register a catch, we quietly store time and location. We also have this other event button, which came into place after discussions. And it now has seal and cormorant. So even when you're traveling between the different fishing sites, or when you're at the fishing sites and you see seals or cormorants, you can provide the number that you see, and then we quietly store time and location on that also. Hopefully this will provide us some sort of tempospatial view of the interaction between fisheries and these animals. When you end the trip, you can adjust the fishing time. You get a proposal for how long the fishing has been. The data we collect then are kind of following the standards proposed by Venturell et al. We're not focusing on angler information because we're working with the guides that we have registered separately, but we get most of the standard data. I should acknowledge also some of the challenges. I see that time is running up a bit, but the Venturell et al. Paper listed them as 3 categories, and a lot more studies are coming looking at these type of biases. There's issues related to fisheries integration. How do we use the data that we collect and really integrate it with our other stock and assessment methods that we use, if any? With the guides, we are currently using a financial transaction to get them to use it, but we need to have discussions to keep using them. This is not an opt-in app at the moment, so it's a different type of system, I think. We're working on the feedback, the transparent data use. We have been very transparent. We can't say what the managers will do in response. So that is a discussion we're having at the moment. We have similar issues as other opt-in apps with avidity bias, so that some people are more willing to contribute. Maybe that introduces a bias. The non-response bias is somewhat handled in the sense that you add a trip before you take it. So you can't really start a trip and see, this is going really well, I'm going to report it, or the opposite. We still need a selection protocol for which trips they should send in. They're not going to send in all the trips that they take. Recall bias is reduced in the sense that we do live reporting. But reporting bias is still possible because it has to be based on trust. They're pretty good at saying the species and the size, but if they actually report the precision of that or the accuracy of that, that's going to be based on trust. We have no way of checking this. So some things to be aware of and work with in the future. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very